Today on the Gametime Guru podcast, we are diving into a world that we have not yet experienced, the world of rodeo. I'm bringing on a world champion in the sport of roping. You don't want to miss this episode of the Gametime Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time! Woo!
This is the Gametime Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's up, everyone? Welcome out to the Gametime Guru podcast. I am your host, Shane Larson. First things first, before we get started, you guys know me by now. I mean, we're almost 4 years running with this show. The growth has been substantial. We've reached almost 90 countries at this point, 56,000 downloads and counting. We're just super appreciative. I want to give a shout out to all the listeners, all the supporters who have, come along, and all the guests that have joined the show and shared their stories with us over the past 4 years. Got to give a massive shout out to my sponsors over at 208 Printing for being the title sponsor of the show. They get me hooked up with my merchandise. If you guys have anything that you need for your brands, anything for your companies, for anything that you're running, you need shirts, anything done, go to 208 Printing. I'll link them here in the bio so you guys can go check them out. But it's made by 208.com, and they'll get you all squared away. Now, guys, today is a first on the show. You guys know my whole point of this show is to deliver a panoramic view on sports. And some people say, what does that even mean, Shane? That's like you're trying to be all like, profound. But what I mean by that is I'm trying to take sports from all angles and let people understand that athletes and sports figures have stories to share with the rest of us, and they're super unique. And I want to cover all sports, not just the mainstream sports that you might see with football, basketball, baseball, those types of things. We want to cover all sports. And today is a first for me. I get to bring on a world champion roper in the rodeo game, if you will, the rodeo industry. I don't know. We'll get to know what you would even call that. It's not even a game. I don't know what we call it, but his name is Tyson Durfey. And Tyson, thanks so much for joining the show. I'm excited to have you on here with us, man.
No, thanks. I am super excited. And yeah, you could call it a game. You could call it a rodeo. You could call it whatever. It's a heck of a good time. I highly recommend anybody out there to go check out their local rodeo because there's thousands of them across America.
Man, if you guys are listening here in the Treasure Valley of Idaho, you guys obviously know the Snake River Stampede. That's a big one. It is fun. Like, I married a country girl, so my wife's all about the country, and I'm more of the city guy. So we kind of have to go to those events, and I've actually gained a huge appreciation for them. So I'm not hating on them by any means. They're actually really fun. So go check out the rodeos if you haven't done so. We've got a lot of them, not just Snake River Stampede. We've got the smaller ones in Caldwell, in Eagle, in Middleton, Parma, whatever. So go check them out. Now, Tyson, we want to get to know your story a little bit too. Before you became a world champion, we'll get to that point, right? But I want to know you before you became Tyson Durfey, the world champion, which your championship came in 2016. I want to get to know the background, what got you in here, because sometimes I watch rodeo and I watch different events that people compete in, and I almost wonder, why on earth would someone do that? It's stressful. It's exciting, but it's stressful. But when did you become infatuated with this type of a lifestyle? And when did you really know that you kind of wanted to compete in this and actually not just compete, but continue to compete at a high level, as a profession?
Yeah, I mean, that's a phenomenal question. For me, and this is going to sound out of the wall for anybody listening. I grew up and my parents got divorced when I was very little. I was 2 years old when they got divorced, and my mother moved into the inner city in Kansas City, and my dad was a cowboy and lived in the country. So I was kind of growing up, I was living this, inner city life, baggy pants, listening to MC Hammer, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, skateboarding with my friends and stealing and just being just wild and crazy, And then I would go the weekend to see my dad, and then it was flip the switch. It's get rid of the MC Hammer pants, comb your hair, it's all jeans and belt buckle and cowboy hat. And so growing up, I had no ambition on even being a cowboy. I from the time I was born, I was I want to ride bikes, I want to be a professional skateboarder, I want to snowboard. That was my thing. It wasn't I wanted to be a roper. And as I began to get older, I got so bad in school. I would just ditch school. I was just so bad. I was in every learning disability class. I'm dyslexic. I'm ADD. I'm all over the place. And my dad sat my mom down. He's hey, you need to send the boy out to the ranch with me and I'm going to teach him structure. I'm going to teach him work ethic. And I went from being like this kid in the city that like literally I listened to the big influences in my life were like Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, MC Hammer, and then like on the rock side, like Metallica, you know, like that was what I listened to. I didn't listen to like George Strait or any of that stuff. And I went from this like wild child to the country boy like that. I went from being the city boy to the country boy. I went to live with my dad, and boy, I didn't like it. I bet
it's culture shock.
Yeah, it was a huge culture shock. Like going from a big city, big schools to this little country school was like a huge shock. But in the whole time, like I wanted to make money. Like in my mind, I was like, I want to hustle. I want to make money. I want to get ahead because we had nothing. Like growing up as a kid, we go for like 2 weeks without electricity, 2 weeks without food. Like my mom wouldn't do any like government assistance programs. So we would just go without food. And I would like sneak off to my buddies' houses and get, you know, some dinner and stuff like that. So I was always hungry to like, you know, get money to create a better life for myself. And at the end of it was the rope, like the rodeo circuit. Like that was my dad's like passion. And I thought, wait a second, I can use this to make money. And I worked and I trained and I worked. And I remember the first week like rodeo, and I profited like $230 for the week. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'd have to work, you know, back then we got like $3 an hour or something like that. This is, you know, 30 years ago. So I was like, man, I can make money if I just win. So that's when it clicked for me. That's when I decided that I'm going to be a cowboy. I'm going to be an athlete and I'm going to win, was because I could do that and I could receive a reward for my actions much higher than an hourly wage.
Oh, I love that. And you know what? I really appreciate the fact that you mentioned like money's not a bad thing. And people, I think it has this like negative, you know, connotation or whatever you want to call it. Like people can say it's evil, but no, like money is there to provide. If you utilize it the right way, you can provide. So you utilize, like that was kind of a motivating factor for you, but in a good way. You wanted to be able to provide, right? Because I remember actually at an event, we had a speaker, it was at Funnel Hacking Live for ClickFunnels, and one of the speakers, I think it was last year's, but they said, you know, the government's job is to protect and serve. It's not to protect, serve, and provide. Like that is our job is to provide, right? So,
amen.
And I think that was awesome that you just kind of mentioned that. Kind of just stuck with me a little bit more there. You know, you wanted to provide for your family. Now I'm curious, this is the question I had, Tyson, for somebody like yourself who has a ton of experience in rodeo. I'm not as well educated on this sport. That's why I'm grateful that you're here with me, but you profit a certain amount of money, but each event, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, there is an expense to that event, like with the travel and you got to keep everything, like you got to keep your animals, you know, well fed, you got to keep your animals housed and all this stuff. So talk to me about, let's say, the first time you actually traveled out of your city and kind of what the expenses look like. And have you ever had like an event where, you know, you didn't win and so you didn't profit anything? You might have been in the hole. Like how does that work with the lifestyle? Is it stressful?
Yeah. So here's the deal. As a rodeo athlete, it's all on me, kind of like a NASCAR driver, right? The expense of the car is on them. The maintenance of the car is on them. The motors, the tires, the team, all the expense boils down to me. Like I have to produce. Now that's multiple ways. It could be winnings. It could be sponsorships. It could be speaking engagements because of leverage that I've used on my fame. It could be multiple different things, but anybody in the beginning has to put up an entry fee. So number one, it costs money to enter a rodeo. There's a fee to enter that rodeo. There's also fees like fuel, you know, truck maintenance, you know, horses. It just really adds up. And so it's a lot like educating gambling, to where the experience that you have allows you to get ahead of the playing field. And you have to use everything to your advantage. I mean, now that I'm a seasoned guy and I have, you know, literally billion-dollar companies that sponsor me, I'm able to have a team around me that help me be successful. Whereas, you know, 15 years ago, I was like starving, living in the backseat of my truck with no money. Like I was trying to scrape by. So it is, you know, on the front end, it can be expensive. And if you look like a guy, maybe a young guy out there that's just trying to get started in the sport, he sees somebody like me and I pull in with my tour bus and my team and all that stuff. He's like, oh my gosh, how can I compete with that? But at the end of the day, you just have to take what you have and utilize that to the best of your ability. You don't have to have the tour bus and the team and all that stuff. You could pick out a small region, say, all right, I'm gonna hit all the rodeos in Idaho because I don't have to travel very much. It doesn't cost me as much to go. and I'm going to go and I'm going to compete locally against those guys. And once I get to the top there, then I'm going to graduate to a much bigger circuit, maybe the Northwest. And then once we get to the top there, then we're going to graduate out to the nation. And that's really what I did. It's an expensive sport to get in and get through, but you just take it one step at a time. You know, it's like climbing Mount Everest. You don't look at the peak and say, I'm going to be there tomorrow. No, you got to freaking get to base camp. Then you got to pass the glacier field. Then you got to get all the way to summit. Like it's a process. You just look at the step ahead of you, not the end goal, because the end goal gets so overwhelming. You just wanting to start.
Man, it's so crazy here. Oh man, it kind of stresses me out, but it's like any entrepreneur for that matter has to kind of go through that process. And you learn that like through rodeo, it's kind of built that mindset that you have to have the persistence, the consistency, then and then the practice and the durability for that matter. I am curious, like, so you're a roper. Has that always been the sport that you focused on as soon as you got into rodeo?
Yeah, actually, I want to be a bull rider. I love bull riding. That's what my dad was a tie-down roper, which is what I do, and he was also a bull rider. In the beginning, when I was younger, I'm like, man, I'm going to ride bulls because that's the cool thing. 8 Seconds just came out as one of the coolest movies, of all time. I mean, even like people even think 8 Seconds is a cool movie, right? Yeah. So I'm like, I'm going to be a bull rider. I'm going to be like Lane Frost and Tuff Eaton and all these guys. And as I graduated up, and I was riding steers and stuff, my dad he was like, you don't want to ride bulls. You want to be a roper. You want to be a roper. And at the end of the day, I realized that, I had like a whole team. Like my dad is a trainer for this. So he trains the horses and he trains the guys. My brothers were both training and working out to be what I am now. And so I had like this whole team of ropers, and I was like the lone guy that wanted to be a bull rider. And I inevitably just went down the roping path because it was the path of least resistance really for me. And at the end of the day, right now I'm 37. Okay. I'm one of the best in the world. I have been at the top for many years now, and I'm very thankful and blessed to my Lord and Savior for, helping me get there. But as a bull rider at 37, I could have hung it up 7 or 8 years ago. Like those guys, they get to 30, they're old. They've been beat up so bad. So for me, I really picked the right path. And going back to like the failure side of things, you asked me if like, did I ever lose money or did I fail? The best in the world at what I do are right about 50% of the time. So we're slightly better than the best batting average. You know what I'm saying? So you have to get used to get your butt kicked. You have to learn how to deal with failure. Matter of fact, the first thing that I teach somebody young coming up, maybe they're a standout in high school or college, I'm like, listen, man, you got to learn how to lose so you can figure out how to win. And if you learn how to lose the right way, you won't beat yourself up. You won't get mad. You won't waste any energy in your mind on the negative stuff, and you'll be looking towards the future, and you'll be successful much quicker. So yes, I've literally lost thousands of times, but people don't remember your losses. They remember your wins.
I dig that, man. I mean, it's interesting. When I speak to athletes and former athletes, for example, Russell Brunson, co-founder of ClickFunnels, had him on my show to talk about his wrestling career. He mentioned something similar, about losing. You've got to lose to appreciate the victories, but also you lose to understand how to win.
Exactly.
The people who you see a lot of people that win their whole life in sports or whatever. And then when they do face adversity, not saying they didn't face adversity up to that point, but like when they lose, finally, they might have a big loss. It's typically hard for them to handle it because they just don't understand it. They're not used to it. You do have to learn how to lose a little bit, and then not only learn how to lose, but learn how to adjust and utilize that as leverage to win. Whether that's watching film, a technique, whatever it may be. Now tell me, Tyson, for you guys, okay, so roping, all right? I'm glad you didn't do bowl. Like, man, you were talking about the injuries. I watched this documentary. I'm sure you've seen it a million times on Netflix. A couple years back, I was watching it, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, no way. Yeah. Like, I would never. I'm scared of big animals anyways. Like I said, I'm a city guy. My wife loves horses. I'm terrified of horses. They're big. I don't like them. And they have like I don't know. I don't like the way they talk to me when I'm walking by. Like they do this stuff. So like, I don't know. They've always freaked me out, but. I guess it's interesting. I want to know from your perspective, like, okay, you don't have a lot of control over like the calf running out there, whatever you want to call it. Is it the calf? Is that what you call it, the calf?
Yeah, the calf. Yeah.
That's how it runs out there. What happens if it goes a different direction or at a different speed than what you're used to, or your horse doesn't cooperate the same way you're used to it? Like, you're in the middle of this event. It takes 10 seconds max? I don't even know.
Yeah, 10 won't win you anything. Most time it's 7, 6 sevens, and 8 seconds. from start to finish.
It's like a split second.
Yeah.
Like, do you practice? Do you truly try to practice all sorts of scenarios when you're roping in your practices? Like it's the calf goes this way, you rope a certain way, you adjust to the way you throw it.
Mm-hmm.
How do your practices typically go when you're kind of leading up to an event?
Yeah. So for me, I practice every single scenario. The biggest mistake that I see athletes in every genre, I don't care if you're a football player, a baseball player, like they practice one thing and they can crank it. Like, I don't care if it's catching a football and it's coming in and it's the same pass every time and you can catch that sucker and using it to build confidence. But then, when you're man-to-man coverage and they're tight on you, they're breathing down your neck, you can't catch anything. Like I practice every scenario. Calf going left, calf going right, calf going straight, calf running really hard, calf being slow. That way, when I get to competition, there's never a surprise for me. There's never a moment where like, oh crap, I didn't practice for that. And I think I see that through a lot of sports. Guys are really, really good at certain things and they lean into that and they get good at that, but they don't work on their weaknesses. But in the heat of the battle, everything and anything can happen. Your weaknesses can get exploited. So for me, when I'm looking at, the type of calf I got, what my horse is doing, the competition, how fast I need to be, all that goes into my practice. When I compete at home, mentally, I'm competing for a world championship in the last moment of the whole season. So I put myself in that pressure situation when I'm at home. That way, when I get to the rodeo, it's not like, oh, I'm scared or I'm nervous or what if, the what ifs don't sit in. I'm so patterned and I'm so practiced at home in the practice pen or wherever I may be that when I get to the rodeo, I'm prepared. There is nothing that I haven't thought of.
I love that, man. Now, as you see like UFC fighters, for example, MMA fighters, boxers, let's talk about this. When they enter into an octagon or into the ring, there's a process and they talk about the pre-match, right? They're sitting in the locker room, they're getting taped up. They're getting ready for this event and they're trying to work on their breathing, not get too overwhelmed. They got to get a sweat going. They get to the ring. They're still working on their breathing because their adrenaline's going. They're nervous. They've got a little bit of, butterflies, but they're preparing themselves hours and hours before the fight, so to speak. I've always wondered this, Tyson, when you get to a rodeo event, because we have a family friend. Sorry, it's a friend of ours. Her dad actually ropes as well. And he won some big money in Vegas at one point. But I remember we were like going to the Snake River Stampede and we were excited to go watch him. It lasts, 7-8 seconds. They missed the rope. So they ended up like not making it. So it's done. And then it's just done. I'm like, man, there's a lot of practice. And he's really good at what he does. But like he had a night that night. I was like, whatever. But I'm curious, like what led up to that? Because like, there's like, do you have a preparation that goes up to that? And then there was like a little bit of disappointment on that end because it's over fast. So what is your like, I guess, pregame ritual, so to speak, if you have one, when you're leading up to an event before those gates open and you're going?
Yeah. So I have what's called a pregame prep routine. And it's something that I have a mentorship program where I coach and train like 400 other athletes, younger athletes. And I teach them all my pregame prep routine. And it's so funny because I spent literally a decade of my life, working this thing out, getting it to a T where no negative thought can enter my mind, where I'm just like bulletproof, ready to roll. And so much of it has to do with what I've learned from like Tony Robbins over the years. Motion is emotion. Like I'm constantly moving. I'm constantly thinking about, certain things. Like when I'm moving and I'm getting warmer, a sweat like a fighter, my body's releasing endorphins. I'm prepping my mind to go get the things that I want. And I visualize everything. Number one, I have the movement. Second thing is I do what's called a 10-run challenge. So I take that run, and you can apply it to football or baseball, that swing or that catch, and I play it over my head 10 times in a row. And I need to be able to do it 10 times in a row without making a mistake. And if I make a mistake, I go back to one and start over again, right? So I do this to fight out any negativity, any insecurity. After I get that done, then I do my positive visualization of the exact run that I want right there, okay? With the calf, maybe I have a little intel on the calf and he normally goes to the right, or I have a little tell that I know he does. It's much like a fighter getting prepared or a boxer getting prepared, and they know that tell that other fighter does, and they know they can catch him with a right hook when he does this or whatever. So I'm running all that through my mind, and I'm doing that while I'm in motion. I never stand still. I will not allow myself to stand still. When you get still, you get stale. You start thinking negative, and all that stuff. Then after that, I go right into my stretching. While I'm stretching, I'm always doing my visualization. And then after that, I focus on my horse. Like, because most people don't realize it. Like, I've got to get myself ready, but then I have like my 1,200-pound buddy over here that I've got to get ready too. Right. And if he just sits there and chills, they're like a human. Like, he needs to be warmed up. He needs to be stretched out. He needs to get his mind on the game. And I do all that as well. So after I get done with all that, there is nothing that's going to penetrate my mind. Nothing. There's not what if this happens? Or remember what he said in the back, he was talking trash. Like, none of that penetrates my mind, and I'm locked in and I'm in my zone. And once I get there, there's no way I'm coming out of it. But in saying all that, it takes me about an hour to an hour and a half to do all that stuff leading up to my run that could last like 7 seconds.
Wow, though, that is intriguing. See, that is the stuff I like to hear. You talked about a mentorship program. Do you train athletes outside of rodeo, or is it specific to the rodeo niche?
Yeah, right now it's specific to the rodeo niche. I'm going to be here in the next 6 months. I'm going to be launching my other program where I talk about mindset, attitude, controlling your thoughts and your behaviors and all that stuff. And I'll have that. My goal is to have that January 1 ready to go. Yeah. But if not, we're gonna have it the next few months. As I'm training, like, for those of you that don't know, I'm training for like my Super Bowl right now, and it's just a few weeks away. So most of my day right now is eat up with training.
I totally understand. So so where can the rodeo folk out there, if they're interested in your mentorship program, where do they go to find that? Yeah, it's just nolimitsmentorship.com. Or you guys can just search me on Instagram or Facebook. I'm super active on both those platforms, and there's links around that get you back there. So just check out my social media and or nolimits.com, and it'll take you right there. For sure. I'll make sure to link those here in the description for everybody who wants to go find that. That's awesome. You just talking about the pregame stuff. I'm just telling you right now, Tyson, from a background in athletics, like that right there. And that's not just athletics, that's life. Like you sometimes, like, getting ready for like a big speaking engagement, whatever it may be. Exactly. That's huge. What you just mentioned right there is like a huge gold nugget. I wish all athletes could take notes right there, because that's you have a ritual, and that's how you get your mind in the right space to be able to execute. And if you're an athlete, or you're a football player, or you're a boxer, it doesn't matter what you do, UFC, or maybe you play high school basketball, or you're a coach. It does not matter. What you have to have is you have to have a standardized process or a framework that gets you ready to go every time. And then if something feels off, you tweak that framework. It's just like testing. It's just testing yourself, right? Maybe I'm doing my pregame prep, but I allowed my mind to wander because somebody said something. Or, in the rodeo business, a lot of time we're getting ready and the crowd's like walking right through us. Right. And somebody will want to come and get an autograph or a picture. Like, I can't allow my thought to get taken off into another tangent. So whatever you're in, whatever sport you're in, have a complete framework put together of how you get ready to go. And if you don't get the outcome that you want, just tweak it. Don't throw it all out and start all over. Just tweak that framework just a little bit. It's just like doing a test, and then tweak it and do it on the next one. And then so on and so forth. You're always tweaking, you're always testing, you're always changing. And after, maybe, 20, 30 games, or, a few 20, 30 matches, I know you might think that that's a long time, but it's not really in the lifespan of an athlete. You have a framework that will work for you, that will serve you the rest of your life, even if you go on to be a speaker, or you have sales presentations or anything like that. It'll work, not just in sports, but it'll work in real life too. I love it, man. Absolutely love it. See, this is what I'm telling you, Tyson. I try to tell everybody, athletes are not dumb jocks. There's a lot of things you learn in sports at all levels that can be implemented into your regular life. I'm telling you right now, and you just showed the rest of them that. So let's go to 2016. You've been preparing your whole life. I'm sure you've had some wins here and there. You've had some losses, ups and downs. But 2016 is when you were crowned, if you will, a world champion. Talk about the experience winning your world championship and what that was actually like. And I want to know what the first thing you did to celebrate was when you actually got the world championship. So I became a world champion. I believe I was 32 years old, roughly. And I had been in contention for a world championship at that point, that was my third time. Okay. And I failed the previous two times at getting it done. And by being in contention, like in the last round of our competition,
anybody knows anything about rodeo, the national finals rodeo is 10 rounds, 10 days consecutive of competition. And on the 10th round, that's where everything's decided, like the last round. And I had failed a couple of times previous. And I remember thinking that, the reason I'd failed before was because I safetied up. I took a safe shot to make money because I wanted security to get me through the next season, right? I could risk it all and win and maybe win first, or safety up and win like second or third in the average or the world champion and the world champion standings. And I had chose when I was younger because I didn't have a lot of money to go to do the safe thing. Well, fast forward to 2016, like finances were much better for me. We have multiple businesses that I've leveraged my fame off the rodeo industry that create cash flow, and I'm very thankful for that. And I told my wife, I said, no more safety up for me ever again. Like, if I get in contention, I'm going to go for it 100%. And I spent a lot of time in prayer, a lot of time in preparation. And it was really ironic because when I started the first of the 10 days, I was nearly last. 15 guys make the cut for the national finals. I was last. And by the last day of competition, I'd worked my way up like 12 positions in the world standings to have a legitimate chance to win a world championship. And in that last run, I had a really bad calf. Like the quickest they had tied him in was like 11. And wow. I needed to be like a quick 7. So I needed to improve his best time by 4 seconds. And I spent a lot of time in prayer and thinking about it. And I said, I'm going to let it go. And I ended up winning third in the last round. And I won the world championship. And I just couldn't believe it. I was so emotional. I cried. I literally started crying because, here I'm 32 years old. I'm past the point like of your prime as an athlete is not 32, for most guys. I didn't know that I would ever get another chance. And I finally win this championship. And that really, for me, was a reflection that I don't care who you are, how old you are. It's never too late to achieve your dreams. It's never too late. If your heart is still beating, there's still air in your lungs, you're still hustling, you're still waking up every day, like you can make that money. If money is your goal, you can write that book, you can have your own podcast, you can have your own show. Like, it doesn't matter. You just got to keep going, right? And that's really what I felt when I won that championship. I walked out on stage and I had my, they have a solid gold belt buckle, diamonds in it. And I held it up. I said, this is for my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And this is a reflection of 2 lifetime goals achieved, mine and my dad's, because it was always my dad's goal for me to get it. And I was just so thankful that it happened. And since then, I've been in the contention to win a world championship like 3 more times, and I haven't done it. So you just never know, man.
Right.
You still have a puncher's chance, and not because I'd safetied up or anything. It just didn't work out. Last year, I lost the world championship by like 0.2 of a second over 10 days of competition. And it was so tough, but that's the way it goes. It's an up and down game. And I just would never quit and never give up. I don't care who you are out there. If you're chasing something you love, just keep chasing it. As long as you love it, just keep chasing it.
I love that, man. That's so cool. You mentioned, Tyson, that you're preparing for basically your Super Bowl right now.
Yeah.
Tell us, like, what are the expectations if we're paying attention to Tyson Durfey? What should we be expecting from you in the next couple of months as you're preparing, and what should we be able to see? Like, are you looking to close this one off and get another title under your belt? Like, how does that, like, what are your expectations for yourself? Obviously you probably want to win it, right?
Yeah, my goal is to be a world champion. It's really difficult this year because, we had Corona hit like after the first third of the season. So like the last 2/3 of the season, all of our big events were just shut. They didn't have any of them.
Right.
So there's this young guy, his name's Shad Mayfield, and he won. And our sport is basically all money. How much can you win, right? The more you win, the more you get in the standings, the further you are. Well, Shad, he won like $150,000 the first 2 events of the season. And he was like $100,000 ahead of second place, which wouldn't be that big a deal if the rest of the season, all the big money rodeos still happened. But because the season got cut and Corona happened, like we didn't have those other big money events to catch up to Shad. So right now he's like $100,000 in front, Now you can win, like if you kill it at the NFR of the year, I won about 150,000 over the 10 days. It's going to be very difficult for anybody to catch up to Shad because he's an amazing athlete and he's so far ahead. So my goal is I want to go and be the best at the finals. Like I want to win the average, which is like I'm the fastest guy over 10 days of competition at the NFR. And I want to just accumulate as much money as possible. And if it's in the cards, maybe I get a chance to win a world championship. And if it's not, at least I perform to the best of my ability. You know, that's what I'm after.
I love it, man. That's awesome. That's super cool. And it's good to hear the perspective, the context behind it too. I mean, everybody's been kind of affected by this, you know, unprecedented pandemic that we are seeing right now. There's the effect it's had on all the sports industry. And it's interesting to hear how it's affected the rodeo circuit as well. Now, here's one question that everybody pops up with the rodeo. It's been on my mind. I said, you know what? I'm going to ask him because our friend, I told you our friend's father ropes. And while it's not bull riding and the injuries may not necessarily be the exact same, he did get his finger ripped off and it's absolutely disgusting. He actually had a picture of it on Facebook.
Oh, come on, man.
They showed it to me because it was when he got to the hospital. And I mean, we're getting super graphic. I mean, it ripped. I'm talking the tendon like snapped from his elbow and ripped through. It almost makes me want to pass out thinking about it. Dude, they showed it to me. I couldn't believe they actually showed it to me because I have a wheezy stomach as it is. But I was like, are you kidding me? What? And then he still does it. He loves it. He loves the game. So like once he got it all taken care of, he healed up. You know, he's like, well, I guess the rope got caught on his glove. He couldn't get it out. It tightened and he couldn't figure it out. So have you?
It's pretty common.
Okay, I guess that is. All right. So have you?
Yeah, no, it's like it's a normal thing. Like it happens all the time. You know, the bull riders, a lot of bull riders pay with their life. You know, I had a friend of mine, a guy that we weren't like best friends, but he was really good friends with my brother. He's a professional bull rider, and he died last year. And so, I mean, the rough stock guys, they could pay with their life. You know, but you love what you do, and you're willing to take that risk. You know, it's just what you do. And the team ropers, like your buddy, I mean, I'd say at least 50% of them are missing a finger. I mean, or close to it. There's a lot of them that are pissed. I personally, I've shattered my left ankle. I've broke my left leg. I've torn my left knee up. I broke both collarbones. I knocked all my teeth out. I took the end of this finger, but luckily it was able to get put back and heal up. And I'm probably on the better end of the scale. I mean, a lot of guys have a lot worse stuff than me. Luckily, most of my stuff, other than the legs and the knee and broken bones and stuff, were not that bad. You know, I've dislocated my right shoulder. I've torn my left groin. I've torn both hip flexors. I got plates and screws in my leg. But that's just normal, man. I mean, when you love what you do, it's not that big a thing. It's like a boxer saying, "Oh, at 60 years old, I'm gonna get punch drunk and I'm not gonna be able to talk right." Well, you don't care about that when you're in the heat of the battle. Right. You just want to win, you know, and you love what you do, so you're willing to take that risk.
100%. Yeah, dude, you just listed off quite a few injuries though. Like the average athlete, you know, they'll say, I tore my knee up a few times, whatever it may be, but you just listed off quite a few. Do those injuries to your legs, I'm just curious, Tyson, does that typically come when you jump off the horse? Like when do those occur? Like getting off? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I broke my leg and my ankle, was when I jumped off the horse. So when you jump off the horse, you're going about like anywhere from 25 to 35 miles an hour. And so when you jump off, if you don't land perfect with your foot, it's easy to rotate your ankle and your leg will just snap. And when I dislocated my shoulder was a similar instance. So it's pretty dangerous. It's like, imagine like sitting in the bed of a truck and then driving like 25 or 35 miles an hour and then having somebody like slam the brakes. That's the sin that we get off our horse when they're running and they stop. It just shoots you off. And you have to be technically correct and land right in order not to get hurt. So yeah, I mean, it's just part of it. But here's the one thing that I absolutely love about rodeo that no other sport has. You are your own boss. There is no coach telling you that you can't make it, you can't play. If you're tough enough, you can play with a broken leg. I know guys that have done it. I know guys that have competed with dislocated arms and elbows. I know guys that have, just literally knocked all their teeth out and still go compete. Like, there is no coach. So as long as you think you can compete, you can play the game. There's nobody telling you that you can't play. Whereas a football player, I mean, I've got multiple friends that played in the NFL that because, you know, after 4 or 5 seasons, they weren't in tight with the coaches and the coaches were invested in younger talent and maybe they just got pushed out. You know, I love that about rodeo. And that's why I'm such an avid, you know, supporter of rodeo is that I don't care if you played, you know, football in college, rodeo has a spot for you. I don't care if you're a college wrestler and you want to still compete and you think you're still an athlete, rodeo's got a spot for you. As long as you think you can compete and win, then get in and get started because the only person holding you back is you.
I love that, man. It kind of brings me to my last question for you too. That's so awesome, man. You know, the Garth Brooks song, you know, it's the Bulls and Blood, it's the Dust and Mud, it's the roar of the Sunday crowd. Everyone kind of knows that. Outside of being your own boss, what would you say is like the thing that sticks out? What is your favorite part about the event, like the whole rodeo circuit, besides being your own boss? But like you get to the event, like what is your favorite part about competing especially at the highest level?
Yeah, I mean, the competition's great. I love the fans. The fans of rodeo, we love America. We love our sport. We love our, most of us, I would say, have a faith, a very deep faith. Mm-hmm. We're not going to shove it down your face or anything, but we do pray at our events. And I love the crowd. The crowd that come to rodeos believe in the same things that I believe in. And it's a very unified group of people. And it's cool, man. It's cool competing with, you know, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 people. All their eyes are on you in that moment. And I feed off that. Like I feed off the crowd. I feed off the competition because it's the best in the world to perform at the best of my ability. And it's for me really at 37 years old. I mean, this year is my 13th time to qualify for the National Finals Rodeo, which is like our Super Bowl. And I'm already a world champion and I'm a Canadian champion 3 times. There's really nothing like, what more can I win that I haven't already won? I do it because I love to compete and I do it because I love the fans and I do it because I love the platform that my good Lord has given me to be out in front of people. And really that's what I love about it. And that's why I keep pushing to try to be better even at my age.
Yeah, man. I think it's so cool to listen to your story. And I love the fact that you're not ashamed of your faith. I love that. And, yeah. You know, you speak up for it. Like you said, you don't shove down people's throats, but you're not ashamed of it. And I dig that 110%. And what I've noticed about rodeo fans on that topic, Tyson, is like, I go to these events, typically speaking, they might have like a connection to a certain athlete, right? That they're rooting for, but I don't ever hear them rooting against other athletes. I don't know. I'm sure you might've in your career, you've had people root against you, but usually it's like a pretty unified thing. Like you said, like everybody's cheering for everybody. They want everybody to be successful. They might have their ties for the certain people out there if it's a family connection or whatnot, but it's actually really cool. Whereas, you know, I've gotten in fights at college football games, man, straight up, like Boise State versus Nevada. We've had some ties in with some other fans and people get a little rowdy and hectic and things happen. But typically speaking in a rodeo, it's not like that for the most part, I would imagine. Not what I've seen anyway.
Yeah, you know, you're right on. It's funny, like I might be back in the box helping Shad or a guy named like Chad Mayfield or Tuff Cooper or whoever. I mean, I might be back in the box helping them, and then I'm going to compete against them. And, you know, when they go, I want them to make the best run and be the fastest they can possibly be. I just want to back in the box and kick their butt when it's my turn. So I don't ever lower myself by saying I hope they do bad. I raise myself to the occasion and say I hope they do great, but I'm going to do that much better.
I love it, dude. That's the competitive nature.
I look at it.
I love it. And you just raise yourself. That's why you're a champion, and that's why you've been so successful in your career. You're 37, Tyson. What's the you said you're out there to compete. You love the sport, you love the fans.
Yeah.
Have you made a decision in your mind? Are you just kind of going with the flow at this point, kind of seeing like how your body reacts, what's good for yourself, for your family, or do you have a target date in mind? Some people say, hey, I'm gonna have X amount of fights left in my career, or I've got till I'm 40, or I've got till whenever. Do you have a spot in your mind, or what's your goal for when you hang them up eventually?
You know what? I know the day that it happens, I'll know it'll be a light switch. I don't have a date that says at 38 I'm done, or after a second. Like, it's just not going to happen that way, because what happens if you do it that way, I've watched and modeled like thousands of other athletes. When you get to the end, you get bitter. oh, it's
Right.
almost over. These young guys don't respect me the way they should, or whatever. You get bitter. And so for me, like, as long as I'm competitive and as long as I can feel like I can beat the young guys, I'm going to go. Like, I'm going to go. And it's not the competition that's hard for me now. It's the travel. You know,
Yeah.
when I first started, I was 300 plus days a year on the road. That's like under 2 months at home a year. And now that I have a family, like, my travel's scaled back, and now I just go to the real big events. I don't go to like a lot of the smaller ones typically on a normal non-coronavirus year. So I'm not hanging it up. I'm hungry. You know, I'm hungry to go and inspire guys. I mean, you know how many late 30, early 40 guys that, you know, think that, you know, it's over for them? Like, dude, you're just getting warming up. You don't have any idea how much time that you have left. Like, life is just starting. It's not ending. You know what I mean? I think people get in their head that it's like, oh, I'm 40. Oh, now I have to hurt. Now my elbow. No, you don't have to hurt. It's a state of mind. Change your attitude. Get hungry again for something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm not going to fall into that. I just seen too many athletes, you know, get to the end, and it's like, you know, everybody's asking Tom Brady, when are you going to retire? When he's like, don't ask me that, because I'm not going to tell you. Like, the moment he thinks he's going to retire, he'll start playing like crap. He's playing like he's 25. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
So I'm trying to learn from Tom and do it that way. Possibly.
That's a smart person to be mimicking, you know, and trying to hacking his style, because he obviously knows what he's doing, takes care of his body, he knows how to compete, and he loves to compete. He loves what he does. I respect that about you, man, and I appreciate you kind of saying that. The athletes I've talked to about that, they mentioned, you know, it was similar to that, like, you know, when they knew, you know, and they were like, hey, when I wasn't excited to go out there anymore, I just didn't want to be, and they mentioned bitter. That was another word that you just said.
Yeah.
They were like, I didn't want to be bitter. They're like, I didn't want to be bitter. So I knew when that was my time and I started feeling a certain way, I wanted to have respect and love for the sport still, even when I hung them up. So I love hearing that. So with that being said, I look forward to seeing you compete. I'm going to be catching an eye, like, with what you're doing. And we look forward to seeing you do it for however long you decide to keep going, man, and competing at a high level. So Tyson, I just want to say thank you for your time. I know you're super busy, and just appreciate you joining the Gametime Guru podcast, my man.
Hey, thanks for doing what you're doing. You're out there helping people, and I've listened to several of your episodes already in prep for just this conversation. And you're a stud. Just keep pushing forward. Keep doing what you're doing, because you're helping people all over the place.
I appreciate you, man. And hey, for all the listeners out there too, go follow him. I'll put all the links here in the description. Go check out his mentorship program as well. Or the mentor program that he just mentioned. We have the links down below. Check it out. And hey, if you want to subscribe to the podcast, do so. And please leave me a 5-star review on Apple if you enjoyed it. Let us know what you think, and we'll be coming to you next week with another episode. Take care. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.